He's got millions in the bank. But it was Lila who paid his bus fare. Sounds crazy? She didn't think much of it at the time. Just saw some guy frozen in the doorway, frantically digging through his pockets like he was searching for the meaning of life. And Lila, half asleep, carrying a backpack, squashing a bag of baguettes, did something even she couldn't explain. Pulled out her wallet and covered his $1.50. Lila, 25. No degree, no savings, credit card deep in the red. She juggles deliveries for 3 different apps and moonlights in a weird little side hustle, live streaming homemade snacks. Her small fan base doesn't show up for the food. They come for the way she roasts herself, like it's an art form. Lila's life boiled down to 3 things: an old motorbike, a scratched-up phone, and a stubborn smile that didn't care about the weather. That day was no different. Blazing hot, delivery schedule packed tight. When her motorbike suddenly blew a tire mid-route, she had no choice but to limp to the nearest bus stop and spend her last dollar of the day on a ticket home. What she didn't expect was that this beat-up old bus would be the plot twist her life didn't see coming. The guy got on right after her. Messy hair, plain gray hoodie, faded jeans, off-white sneakers that had seen better days. At a glance, he looked like some burned-out student or a blue-collar worker fresh off a shift. But his eyes were different, still as ice, not empty, but that kind of deep stillness that makes you uneasy. When it was his turn to pay, he just stood there, checking his wallet, then his pockets, then back to the wallet again. The driver started to snap. "Hey man, either pay or get off." The guy finally looked up, voice so soft it nearly got swallowed by the engine. "I forgot my wallet. I'm sorry." No one said a word. No one offered to help. But Lila stood up, took a step forward, and held out a bill. "I'll cover him. $1.50. Let's not have the driver blowing a fuse mid-route." She said it half joking, half serious. No thanks, no sappy moment, no care for the stares around her, just because she knew that feeling, being looked at like you're something dirty. The man looked at her for a long second, then smiled, a smile so faint it almost didn't exist. "Thanks. Next time, I'll pay you back in a different way." The words slipped by, unnoticed by anyone but her, and then he walked to the back of the bus, sat down like nothing had happened. The rest of the ride was silent. When the bus reached the last stop, he got off first, never looked back. That night, Lila went live like usual. She told the story on her stream, half joking, half deadpan. "Today I spent $1.50 on a guy who forgot his wallet. Didn't get his number, nothing romantic. Just a weird vibe. But hey, life's like that. The weird stuff sticks longer than the normal." Her chat exploded. Some called her dumb. Some guessed the guy was a hot guy in disguise. One person even joked, "Watch out, next time he might pay you back with his utility bills." Lila laughed it off, scrolled through the comments without a care. To her, it was just a strange blip in a regular day, not worth overthinking. What she didn't know was that somewhere else in the city, that man was still holding the bus ticket, turning it over and over like it was a key to something bigger than a thank you. Black card, penthouse, sports car, $1,000 dinners, the things that once made him feel elite now felt like decoration for a life stuck on repeat. Ethan Dorn, CEO of a tech company worth hundreds of millions, had just wrapped up his 3rd date that week. All 3 were eerily similar, gorgeous, polite, and their eyes lit up every time he mentioned his net worth. Ethan hated it so much that the moment he walked into his luxury apartment, the first thing he did was yank off his Rolex and toss it on the table like a cheap toy. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he knew exactly what he wasn't: to be loved for his wallet. That night, in a nearly empty bar, he said it out loud to the one person who wouldn't sugarcoat it: Miles, the company's CFO and his oldest friend. The only guy bold enough to tell him straight, "You live like a king, but complain like a lovesick nobody." "I want to try living like a regular person," Ethan said, not joking. "You mean quit being CEO and bag groceries?" Miles raised an eyebrow. "Not exactly. I want to see the world through the eyes of someone unknown, unremarkable, untouched by expectations or agendas." Miles laughed. But the next morning, Ethan actually vanished from the office. No announcement, no press release, just an email marked "short leave" with a cryptic line: "Off to find what's real." 1 week later, in a plain shirt, jeans, unstyled hair, and using a new name, Ethan Doe, he walked into a tiny diner tucked in a middle-class neighborhood in Queens. No flashy signs, no sleek branding, just a family-run spot serving up burgers, sandwiches, chicken soup, mashed potatoes. He didn't bring a resume, just said one sentence. "I need a job. I'll do anything." The diner owner, a sharp-eyed Puerto Rican woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense vibe, asked if he had any kitchen experience. Ethan replied, "I can tell when chicken's done, by the smell of it burning." She stared at him for 3 seconds, then burst out laughing. And just like that, Ethan got the job, as a kitchen assistant. His first morning in the kitchen was a minor disaster. He knocked over a pot of creamed corn soup, sending it spilling across the counter. A customer walked in at that exact moment, stepped in the mess, and started ranting, demanding to see the manager. Ethan stammered out an apology, face as red as a tomato. Then her voice cut through from behind. "If you can't cook, at least learn to clean. Money doesn't make anyone better in a kitchen." "What's the point of a man having money if he can't even cook?" Ethan turned around. It was her, the girl who had paid his bus fare. Same oversized t-shirt, messy bun, arms wrapped around a bag of rice paper snacks, gum popping between her teeth. Her eyes had that same teasing glint, oddly charming. She dropped into a seat by the door, pulled out her phone, and started eating like the rest of the world didn't exist. Ethan just stood there. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely off balance. Not because he'd screwed up, but because she saw right through him and didn't judge. From that day on, Lila became a regular at the diner. And Ethan, clumsy as ever, slowly got the hang of kitchen life. He couldn't chop onions without tearing up, couldn't tell romaine from kale, once dropped an entire tray of salad just because he got distracted by her smile. One time, while he was hunched over wiping down the counter, a commotion broke out near the door. A female customer was demanding a refund because her dish didn't look like the picture online. The other staff froze. Lila stepped in, not as a customer, but like the place was hers. "Ma'am, the photo online?" "That's my shot, 45-degree angle, Japanese cam filter with a ring light. What you got on the table? That's real food, no edits, no makeup. If it's not good, we'll swap it. But don't expect our kitchen to catfish for likes." The whole diner fell silent. Then laughter burst out from a table in the corner. Ethan just stood there, stunned. He didn't know why he found that moment so charming. Maybe it was because she wasn't afraid of anyone. Or maybe because, in a world where everyone's busy trying to please, Lila had the guts to snap people out of it. That night, Ethan sat alone in front of a muted TV, replaying the look in her eyes when she smiled. It was a look that didn't beg, didn't expect, didn't calculate. And suddenly, he felt afraid. Afraid that if she ever found out who he really was, it'd ruin everything. Because for the first time, Ethan Dorn, the cold-blooded CEO, realized he was falling for a girl who had no idea who he was. Lila wasn't the nosy type. In her world, just getting through the day was enough to fill every minute. But ever since the new kitchen guy showed up at her usual diner, she found herself noticing things, without meaning to. He was clumsy in a way that didn't fit the usual kitchen crowd, held a knife like it was unfamiliar, chopped onions like he was playing piano, and every time he washed veggies, it was a splash zone like he was trying to summon a wave. But his eyes, that's what stuck with her, were too calm, too deep, too knowing. They didn't match someone clocking in for minimum wage. They were the eyes of someone who'd seen too much and was still watching, like he hadn't seen enough. One afternoon, with the diner quiet and the lunch rush over, she kicked her feet up on a chair and started live streaming like always. Her phone screen showed her munching fries, talking to her viewers about level 10 spice tolerance. Ethan walked by, still holding a steaming bowl of soup. She saw him in the phone's reflection, and suddenly asked, "Hey, you know how to live stream?" He blinked. "You mean, talk to a phone so strangers can watch?" "Yep. Say whatever, just don't break any laws." He glanced at the phone perched on a wooden stand. The screen showed 500 viewers watching. Then he looked at her. "I'm not much of a talker. Even better, neither am I. People prefer us awkward over preachy." So Ethan sat down next to her. His face appeared on the live stream, lit by the soft glow of the weak porch light overhead, creating a strangely cozy frame. "This is Ethan," she said, grinning at the camera. Name sounds like a Hollywood heartthrob, but in the kitchen? He's worse than a first grader. She introduced him without the slightest sugarcoating. He chuckled, nodded, voice low and a little shaky. Been working here a week, probably longer than the shelf life of the soup I made yesterday. The chat lit up with laugh emojis. One viewer commented, "He's cute but looks kinda clueless, definitely single." Ethan saw it, smiled softly. Guilty. Probably because I talk like a virtual assistant with no emotion plug-in. She turned to him, tilted her head with a grin. "But you're real." People are into real these days. The live stream ran longer than usual. No script, no gimmicks. Just a funny girl and an awkward guy sitting side by side, sharing tiny kitchen stories. By the next day, views had doubled. The comments were filled with one recurring thought. These two? Total comfort vibe. That night, after the diner closed, Lila was cleaning up when she saw Ethan sitting on the back steps, the quiet spot where the breeze came through and no one really noticed. She grabbed 2 bottles of water and sat down next to him. "You're not much of a talker, huh?" "Yeah. I think more than I speak." "That's fair. Talking a lot gets tiring. I talk too much because if I don't, I'm afraid I'll think too much." A stretch of silence followed, but it wasn't uncomfortable. "I used to love someone," Ethan said, eyes fixed on the sidewalk ahead. She was beautiful, smart, ambitious, but eventually I realized what she really loved was my wallet, not my heart. Lila didn't laugh, didn't pry. She just lifted her bottle and tapped it gently against his. "Lucky you," she said. "I don't even have a wallet for anyone to choose." He turned to her and laughed. For the first time it wasn't measured, not polite, not restrained, just real. She stood up first, tossed her empty bottle into the trash. "And hey, rinse the salad better tomorrow. A customer said they bit into dirt. I thought that was organic seasoning." Say that on a live stream and you'll probably land a sponsorship deal. She walked off, and he stayed behind a little longer, holding the empty bottle like it was anchoring him to a moment he wasn't quite ready to leave. A few days later, she spotted him crouched in front of the diner, working on a beat-up bike. His t-shirt was streaked with grease, and sweat had soaked through his back in uneven patches. Lila was about to walk past like she always did, until her eyes snagged on a spot they absolutely shouldn't have. The curve of his spine bent forward, the shirt clinging to his body just enough to show shape. Not a showy gym body with sharp abs on display, but the kind of lean, solid build that says I don't lift for selfies. I lift because life's heavy. She froze for 2 seconds, then muttered to herself, fully betraying her own pride. "Huh. Not bad." And just as quickly, mentally slapped herself. "Lila, seriously? Are you sweating from the sun or from that guy?" She stepped closer, trying to keep her voice level, but there was a flicker of something offbeat. "That bike's not fixing itself, you know? Need me to rescue you?" Ethan looked up, hair damp, sweat dotting his forehead, but his eyes calm as ever. "If you've got magic, I could use some." "No magic," she said, "but I do have an electric scooter. Batteries at 80%, just enough to get one nearly dead man home." He laughed. She added, grinning, "But I don't give rides to people who soak the seat. Wet seats, instant deduction." That made him actually laugh, sharp and real. She turned quickly to hide the smile breaking through her own defenses. In her head, one phrase kept looping. "Oh no, I just got a crush on his back." Trying to mask the not-so-innocent direction her brain was heading, she pulled out a helmet and held it out like she was handing over a national duty. "You know how to hold on? No room for weak hearts back there." "I'm not sure," he said, standing up, taking the helmet. "But I do know how to trust the driver." As the scooter wove through the city streets, the glow of shop windows flickered in the glass around them. She sat up front, he sat behind. The wind tugged at her hair, blowing strands back toward him, occasionally brushing his face like it meant to. Neither of them spoke, but when they pulled up in front of his place, a no-frills monthly rental in a modest neighborhood, she didn't hop off right away. Instead, she gently leaned her head against his shoulder, like the weight of the whole day had finally found somewhere to rest. The moment wasn't glamorous, not beautiful, not cinematic, but it felt warm, honest, and quietly comforting, like an exhale at the end of a day well spent. And inside each of them, though neither said a word, something had just begun to grow. 3 days later, in the middle of scrambling to prep a rush order, Lila turned to him and asked something she didn't even see coming out of her own mouth. "You free this weekend?" "Yeah." "Why?" "I'm heading home. My mom has this habit of making me bring someone potentially marriage-worthy for her to evaluate." "You want to be a test candidate?" She said it half joking, half not. He laughed, thinking she was just messing around, but the next afternoon she actually sent him her mom's address. Going back to someone's hometown wasn't exactly on Ethan's list of ideal date ideas. He was used to candlelit dinners, beachfront resorts where the staff wore polished shoes and addressed guests like royalty. But when Lila asked him to come home with her for the weekend, with that mischievous smile and eyes that made no not an option, he said yes, not because he was ready, but because he wanted to see her real world and find out if he could actually belong in it. The bus ride to the northern suburbs took nearly 3 hours. Lila slept through most of it, head leaned against the window, hair gently tousled by the wind. Ethan sat beside her, earbuds in, instrumental music playing, but his mind was anything but calm. He'd never met anyone like her, blunt, loud, funny, but also the only person who made him feel like he didn't have to adjust his face before speaking, like he could just show up as himself. The town where Lila grew up had exactly one small supermarket, a single pizza joint, and a gas station tucked between endless cornfields. Her house sat at the end of a dirt road, with a faded tin roof, a netted hammock in the front yard, and a riot of bougainvillea climbing over the porch. Her mother, a petite woman with sun-darkened skin and eyes sharp enough to scan a man's bank account with a glance, was already waiting by the gate, arms crossed, gaze unforgiving. "Who's this?" "Coworker. Sous chef. Average level." Ethan gave an awkward smile and bowed slightly. Her mom didn't respond, just gave him a tight nod and turned back into the kitchen. Lila winked at him. "She runs background checks faster than the FBI. Try smiling without trembling." All afternoon, Ethan stepped into a world he'd never known, real tin roofs patched by hand, well water pumped the old-fashioned way, and soup simmered in a dented aluminum pot, balanced on a single-burner gas stove. But what struck him most wasn't the rustic setting. It was the feeling inside the house, worn but intentional. Everything had a place, a story, and a quiet sense of belonging. That evening they ate outside under the open sky. The moon was full, and the porch light flickered like Christmas bulbs, even though it was April. Her mother finished eating early and disappeared inside to make a call to some distant relative, leaving the two of them out front, sipping cheap soda and soaking in the calm. "I used to sell lottery tickets when I was a kid," Lila said, eyes drifting toward the distance. "Some days it was so cold, my fingers turned purple. I'd shake so hard I couldn't even count the change right. One time I got kicked out of a diner just for standing too close to the door. Back then, I promised myself, when I grow up, I don't need to be rich. I just want to meet someone who won't leave me when I'm at my lowest." Ethan looked at her and felt something slowly pierce through his chest. Not pity. It was respect. Deep, quiet respect. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Don't. Just listen. That's enough." She stood up, dusted her hands, and headed toward the kitchen. "Now comes the main event, the family legacy dish. If it sucks, you don't get to go back to the city." Ethan laughed and followed. She handed him a bundle of greens, a worn wooden cutting board, and a small knife. "Pick the leaves, cut into chunks, 2 knuckles long. Mess it up, and you'll get yelled at. Orders received, chef." He clumsily separated the leaves, trying to remember her 2-knuckle rule, but his mind kept drifting, lost in the way her voice bounced between stern and teasing. Beside him, she tossed onions in the pan, and the smell hit him hard, making his stomach grumble, even though they'd just eaten. He reached over to pass the cutting board and accidentally sent a few slices tumbling to the floor. She picked them up, shook her head. "You've got no chemistry with vegetables. Maybe dish duty suits you better. As long as I'm on the same shift as you, I'll take any station." That made her pause, just a flicker, but instead of replying, she gave a small nod. Said nothing, but didn't walk away either. Dinner ended in laughter. Her mom told a story about how little Lila once got jealous of the neighbor's dog because it got fed first. Ethan sat and listened, feeling like he belonged, not as a guest, not as an outsider, but like this worn wooden table had always had a seat saved just for him. He didn't catch every word, but he understood the way these people cared, adding an extra piece of tofu to someone's bowl, giving away the last bite of meat without asking, refilling a glass the moment it got low. Afterward, Lila pulled him out to the backyard to catch the breeze. The night was still. The moon hung high, and crickets filled the silence with their soft chorus. They sat on two old plastic chairs, feet resting on a chipped patio brick. She handed him a cold can of soda. He took it, clinked it lightly against hers, and said nothing. Neither of them needed to. "When I was little, I used to think the world was only as big as that dirt road out front," she said, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the moonlight. "But every time I went out to sell lottery tickets, just a little farther, I started to want more. And the farther I went, the more one fear kept creeping in. If I fall, will anyone stay?" He didn't answer right away. Her words landed, soft but deep, and behind them a storm of his own questions started building, loud and sharp. Am I lying to her? I'm using a fake name, a fake life. For what? To test her? To chase something real? By being fake? Ethan tightened his grip around the soda can. He wasn't a bad person, not in the way headlines define it, but silence doesn't make you good either. And the longer he stayed near Lila, the harder it became to ignore the guilt swelling in his chest. She didn't know who he really was, and he was using that to exist in a world where, for once, someone didn't have their guard up. When she stood up and said she was heading into the kitchen to clean up a bit, he followed. Inside, she had already laid out the ingredients to make fried corn cakes, what she called her family's signature dish. "You shave the corn. I'll mix the batter. Cool? Shave the corn? Is there a tutorial?" "Yeah, just don't shave off a finger into the bowl, and we'll be fine." They worked side by side, and the mood was so light, so easy, that Ethan forgot whatever heavy thoughts had been chasing him 10 minutes earlier. His hands were clumsy. He dropped almost half the kernels onto the counter. But she just laughed and picked them up like she'd done it 100 times before. "Why'd you agree to come home with me?" she asked, still focused on her mixing bowl. "Because I wanted to see what makes you you." "And what do you see?" he was about to answer. Really answer. Not just her question, but everything. He wanted to tell her his real name was Ethan Dorn, that he was the CEO of a tech company anyone could find in seconds with a quick Google search, that he didn't grow up with dented pots or backyard hammocks, and that the closer he got to her, the more terrified he was of losing her because of all that. He took a breath, opened his mouth to speak, and then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. On the screen, Tina, private line, his assistant. He hesitated, then picked up. "Ethan, you need to hear this. Your photo's on Reddit. Someone recognized you. The company's getting tagged non-stop. Reporters are circling. You can't stay there any longer." He said nothing. The cold soda in his hand had started to sweat, leaving a wet ring on the table. Lila watched him closely, eyebrows pulling in. "Something wrong?" He looked at her, then at the plate of uncooked corn cakes, then back at her again. There were 1,000 things he wanted to say, but in that moment, every word lodged in his throat. "It's nothing. Just work stuff. I have to head back to the city sooner than planned." She nodded, didn't press, but her eyes, sharper than most would guess, held on to a flicker of quiet suspicion. And for Ethan, for the first time, the question, "Am I lying to her?" wasn't a doubt anymore. It was a fact, a truth he couldn't dodge any longer. 2 days after Ethan left town, Lila returned to the city too. She didn't ask again why he'd cut the trip short, but something hung in the air between them, unfinished. Still, the rhythm of deliveries, online orders, and spicy snack live streams quickly pulled her back into the everyday hustle. But that small, unspoken weight, it never quite left. That morning, Lila was sitting in her usual cafe, holding a warm croissant in one hand and a cup of extra sweet black coffee in the other. She'd just sold a few more bags of her homemade spicy snacks through her online store, and for once, her mood was unusually light. Her phone screen was still open on TikTok, but she wasn't really paying attention, until a video started playing automatically. CEO Ethan Dorn spotted at ATM in Queens, living undercover among locals. Her heart clenched like someone had reached in and grabbed it. The screen showed his face, clearly. No longer the clumsy guy wiping down tables at the diner, but a man in a sharp suit, stepping out of a black Mercedes, pulling out his wallet to make a transaction at an ATM. Right then, a reporter's voice cut in. Ethan Dorn, founder of a tech company worth hundreds of millions, is reportedly living incognito among everyday people to find inspiration, according to a close source. She had no idea how long she'd been frozen in place. All the noise around her seemed to vanish into a vacuum. She scrolled down to the comments. Someone wrote, "CEO playing dress up again." Another laughed, "PR stunt, maybe?" She pulled out her earbuds, closed the video. The screen flipped to another image of him, this time by a pool, with a caption that read, "Previously linked to international models, current relationship status undisclosed." She let go of her coffee cup. Her heart wasn't racing because he was famous. It was because she had truly believed they started from the same place, that what they had wasn't about conditions or expectations, but about something that simply felt right. And now, she wasn't even sure where she stood anymore. If you've been listening up to this point, put yourself in Lila's shoes. What would you do? Hunt Ethan down, screaming for answers? Or walk away in silence? We want to know what you'd feel in that moment. Back to the story. That afternoon, he went to the diner looking for her. She wasn't there. One of the staff said, "She texted, taking a few days off." He called. No answer. Texted. Left on read, if it was even seen at all. 3 days later, he found her at a park near her place. She was sitting alone, holding a snack bag, eyes locked on the ground like she was trying to spot something she'd dropped and couldn't find again. He walked up slowly. "Layla." She didn't look up. "How long?" "What do you mean? How long have you known you're Ethan Dorn and still let me call you a mid-level kitchen guy?" He took a breath. "Since the beginning, I wanted to try being real. No filters. No one knowing. I never expected it to turn into this." She looked up. Her eyes were red. "Try being real? Then what about me? What was I in that little social experiment of yours?" "No, it wasn't like that. I wasn't trying to test anyone. I just wanted—" "Oh, so you were in disguise?" She cut in. "I'm not a character in your little trust play." He froze. She kept going. "I thought you were broke like me. That's the only reason I let myself fall. I'm not someone with low self-respect, but I do deserve to know who I'm stepping into something with and under what terms." "Lila, I never meant to hurt you. This wasn't some test of character. I just wanted to see if being poor made me kind, to find out if I was worth investing in. Sorry, I'm not a stock. And I'm definitely not some demo version for you to beta test your trust issues on." He went quiet, like he was choking down 1,000 things he couldn't find the courage to say. She stood up, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "From the moment I paid your bus fare, you owed me one thing, the truth. And that's the one thing you never gave." Then she walked past him like a breeze, one that never looked back. That day, he sat alone in the diner. The same place where she used to tease him for butchering onions. Her usual chair still had a faint red stain from the day she dropped a bag of spicy sauce. Staring at that empty seat, he realized he'd just lost the only thing in his life that didn't need a label to be worth something. The next night, in the top-floor office of the company headquarters, Ethan walked into a boardroom full of executives. On the table sat the IPO documents, part of a multi-million-dollar launch he and his team had been building for the last 2 years. The CFO walked the room through projections, growth charts, and global expansion strategies. When it was Ethan's turn to speak, he looked around the table for a few seconds, then said, "I'm not signing." The room went dead silent. Miles, his best friend, tugged at his sleeve. "Ethan, don't mess around. We locked this deal." "I know. But today I realized something. If I lose the money, I can earn it back. If I lose her, no IPO in the world is going to fix that." "Wait. Hold up. Take 3 seconds. If you were Ethan, standing at the crossroads between a multi-million-dollar deal and the one person who made you feel real, what would you choose?" 1. Sign the deal. Secure the success. 2. Walk away. Choose love. Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know, what would you choose? No one truly understood, and they didn't have to. Ethan walked out of the boardroom, stepped onto the balcony, and looked down at the city lit up below. In his mind, one thought rang louder than ever. Some things can't be bought back, not even with an IPO. A month passed. The headlines stopped screaming about Ethan Dorn. News stories took over. Massive mergers, celebrity scandals, the next viral controversy. The media moved on. The world found a new target. But Ethan stayed gone. No appearances at company events, no interviews, no social media updates. People called it a strategic disappearance. But the truth? He was just living in a short-term rental in the suburbs where no one knew his name. No meetings, no neckties, no CEO. And Lila? She slipped back into her routine like it was second nature. Online orders, regulars at the diner, late afternoon snack live streams. No one held her hand on the way to the bus stop anymore. No one gave her that look that made her blush mid-bite during a live. But life had to keep moving. She pushed herself to stay upbeat on every stream, keeping the tone light even when her heart felt heavy. Anyone buying today's 3-pack combo gets a bonus. 1 guaranteed smile, valid for 7 days. Returnable? If it makes you miss someone, you really shouldn't. The viewers still laughed, the comments still rolled in, but longtime followers could feel it. Something in her had shifted. She still joked about herself, but the bite was softer. Her voice still carried that fast, witty rhythm, but now it dipped slightly at the end of her sentences, like something inside was holding back. One Friday afternoon, while she was live streaming and packing orders, a special one popped up on the system. No name. No full address, just one short message: send a smile to the girl who once paid for my bus fare. She froze for a few seconds, her hand still gripping the roll of tape, but her heart felt like someone had just lifted a heavy weight off it. The chat exploded. What was that, sis? Was that a love note? It's Ethan, isn't it? She swallowed hard and forced a smile. Maybe it's from someone with a really good memory. 3 days later, that same order showed up at her doorstep. A plain, unmarked box, sealed tight. She didn't live stream the unboxing. She sat alone, a utility knife in one hand, her heartbeat pounding like a drumline. Inside the box was a letter and a plane ticket, one way, from New York to Seattle. Departure date? Her birthday, a detail not many people knew. The letter, handwritten on simple paper, read, "This trip doesn't come with business class. No set itinerary either. It's only for someone willing to live without filters. If you don't come, I'll understand. But if you do, we start over. No secrets. The guy who forgot his wallet but never forgot you." She sat still, staring at the plane ticket. The printed letters seemed to blur, fading into the shimmer of tears that had finally made it to the surface. That night, she went live like usual. No flashy backdrop, no softbox lighting. Just her, and a small mailbox sitting quietly in front of her. As soon as the stream started, the comments came flooding in. What's in the box? Is it a love letter? Why do your eyes look red tonight, sis? She laughed, but this time, it was real. Soft, slow, like an exhale she'd been holding in for too long. Tonight I'm not selling anything. No promos, no taste tests, no jokes. I just want to tell you all a story. She lifted the plane ticket and held it toward the camera, just enough of the corner visible for sharp eyes to catch it. Someone once told me, this flight isn't for the afraid. She paused for a few seconds, then looked directly into the lens. Her voice was quiet like a breeze. I don't know where this flight is really going, but I know it starts with an old piece of trust. She smiled, nodded gently, like she'd just made a choice no one could make for her. Then ended the live stream. The small room returned to silence. But inside her, something had just lit up, like a street lamp flickering on unexpectedly during a cloudy night. JFK Airport on a May morning, not chaotic, but not quiet enough for anyone to stand out easily in the crowd. And yet he spotted her the second she walked through the glass doors, still with that slightly rebellious stride, the worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder, and her hair thrown into a crooked bun that cared nothing for fashion rules. Ethan stood waiting in the arrivals area, not in the polished suit the magazines were used to, but in a plain gray t-shirt, jeans, and slightly worn sneakers. In his hands were two things: a ham sandwich, the kind she once called her breakfast soulmate from childhood back home, and a frayed notebook, pages curled at the edges, the same one she'd dropped during a live stream and mourned for days because it held sketches of business ideas she'd never had the chance to chase. When she stopped in front of him, they just looked at each other for a moment that stretched out like a silent film. No words, just weight. Her face hadn't fully softened, but her eyes had. He tightened his grip on the notebook just slightly, then held it out to her. You dropped this at the diner that day. I kept it, hoping I'd get the chance to hand it back properly. She took it, didn't open it yet, just looked at him, then asked quietly, "The sandwich?" He raised his other hand and held out the sandwich, wrapped neatly in brown paper, tied with a thin piece of twine. The kind of packaging that looked more like it came from a small-town deli than from a tech CEO's world. She laughed, not out of joy, but from relief. Like she just stepped out of a long chapter and remembered she was still the main character, still had a say in how the story ends. "You showed up," he said, voice low and rough, "not to hear an apology, but to see if I'm still worth trusting again." She nodded, not a confident nod, but a real one. And in love, sometimes that's all it takes. He looked straight at her now, no flicker of hesitation in his eyes, unlike that last time in the park. "The first time I met you, I brought a broke face. Today, I only brought one thing, the truth." She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I don't need you to be rich. I just need you to not hide anything from me this time." He nodded. No excuses, no overpromising. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal, that cutting through the stillness between them. They walked side by side through the gate. No one asked where they were headed. No one needed to, because both knew this trip wasn't about where they were going, it was about who they were going with. Their seats on the plane were standard economy, limited recline, tray table a little sticky, headphones buzzing when music played. But no one complained. Ethan took the window seat. Lila sat next to him, still holding the notebook and the sandwich she hadn't touched. As the plane began to taxi, lifting off the ground, Lila turned to him, eyes half joking, half serious. "You sure this is a good idea? Us running off like some action movie?" "Not sure. But if you're with me, I don't need to be." She laughed, quietly, but just enough to make him turn toward her. He gently took her hand, no hesitation this time, no fear of doing it wrong. Outside the window, clouds drifted by like faded streaks of memory, slow, soft, and shapeless. She leaned her head on his shoulder, said nothing, and he let her, saying nothing too. That moment didn't need a label, didn't need a definition, didn't even need the word love. Because sometimes love is exactly that, when two people feel like nothing's missing, even when all they have is each other. And in that small, quiet space, Ethan's voice broke the silence, low but steady. "Real wealth isn't about money. It's about being with someone who makes you feel like you're not missing anything, even when it's just the two of you. Some journeys don't need a map. Some people don't enter your life with promises, but with something much smaller. $1.50 bus fare, an honest sentence, a look that doesn't flinch." Lila didn't need someone perfect. Ethan didn't need a textbook relationship. They just needed someone who let them be fully, unapologetically themselves. Rich or broke, right or wrong, healed or still hurting. Because love, in the end, isn't about where you start. It's about who's willing to walk with you, all the way to the end. And you, what about you? Have you ever trusted someone, even when you weren't sure they were being real, but you chose to believe anyway? If you were Lila, would you have boarded that plane, or stayed behind, guarding your heart a little tighter? Drop your answer in the comments. We truly want to hear your story. If this one hit home for you, don't forget to subscribe, tap the heart, and share so you won't miss the next love story. Because who knows, the next story might just be the one you're living.